Jackson, Michigan. Everything Shri Thayndar said sounded great to the small crowd of die-hard lefties who spent the Friday night of Memorial Day weekend in this conservative, rural burg checking out the state's hottest Democrat. That may be because he earnestly agreed to somehow deliver whatever his listeners requested, if only they would help him upset the establishment, win the Democratic nomination and capture the governor's seat in Lansing. A school social worker called for a raise and more school psychiatric services. Thayndar agreed, then pivoted to assert that he opposes efforts to arm teachers. Teachers are there to teach, he declared to applause. An activist demanded he pledge that a first order of business as governor would be to add civil rights LGBTQ protections to the state's anti-discrimination statute, and he readily made the vow. An employee of the nearby state prison complained about work conditions, giving Thayndar an opening to denounce the school-to-prison pipeline. And when someone asked him what he thinks of Bernie Sanders, Thayndar was ready. Well, I am the only gubernatorial candidate that voted for Bernie Sanders, he grinned. I like Bernie. I went and saw him in Iowa when he was starting his presidential campaign. I stood in the back of him. I like Bernie. I call myself, though, a fiscally savvy Bernie. He had a lot of good ideas, but how are we going to pay for it? We need to find ways to pay for it. And in that answer is the peculiar spectacle of the Thayndar candidacy at work. He's a 63-year-old millionaire chemist and entrepreneur who took advantage of the fact that only a few months ago, when he launched his quixotic, self-financed campaign for Michigan governor, he was utterly unknown. Upon that blank canvas, he's spent $3 million and counting in TV ads to paint an image as a Sanders acolyte with big progressive ideas who disarms skeptics of his accent. Thayndar is an Indian immigrant and his non-European name with endearing, self-effacing jokes. As a result, he now has higher name recognition than former state Senate Democratic leader Gretchen Whitmer, the presumed Democratic frontrunner. Since March, several polls have had him in a statistical tie with Whitmer, with the most recent giving Thayndar a 3-point lead. Thayndar has pledged $6 million of his own money to his campaign, which made a big splash with a debut TV commercial during this year's Super Bowl. Until last week, with less than 2 months until the August 7th primary, he was the only Democratic candidate to run TV ads. Thayndar successfully packaged himself as a big spending, soak the rich, free everything for all Sanders devotee. But more significantly, he uses the word progressive as often as possible as a brand signifier to an electorate getting to know him for the first time. I'm a person who has lived a progressive life, who has strong progressive views, Thayndar told the crowd in Jackson. No other candidate has more progressive views than me. So why are so many Democrats anxious, angry and downright hostile to Shri Thayndar's candidacy? To many in Michigan, Thayndar's explosive burst onto the political scene is a partisan mirror image of the trajectory of another oddly coiffed, thick-accented businessman turned politician. And as establishment Republicans in 2015 and 2016 did with Donald Trump, Democrats here question what Shri Thayndar really believes. As a candidate, Thayndar may support the full catechism of progressive priorities, universal child care and pre-K, criminal justice reform, marijuana legalization, and so on, but as a private citizen, he has a more mixed record. In March 2008, he donated $2,300 to Senator John McCain's presidential campaign. He says he did so to attend an event and ask McCain a question about immigration policy. That same year, on the third page of his self-published memoir, The Blue Suitcase, Thayndar venerated Howard Roark, the hero of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, as an exemplar of American individualism. More recently, C-SPAN footage unearthed by The Intercept shows Thayndar attending a 2016 campaign rally for then GOP presidential hopeful Senator Marco Rubio, nodding and applauding the Florida senator's conservative message and attacks on Hillary Clinton, and ultimately introducing himself to Rubio and asking for a photo. A wealthy first-time candidate prone to lofty, unverifiable claims, vaulting to the top of the polls in a high-profile race by wrapping himself in the cloak of a movement he had little connection to before his campaign launch. For months, Democrats opposed to Thundar's candidacy have